Douglass was born in Baltimore. He lived in Baltimore. He escaped from Baltimore to be free. Frederick Douglass was an amazing person who respected education. And so for me, the idea that we are here trying to make sure that we help to educate our young people about their history is what Frederick Douglass would have wanted. Frederick Douglass respected reading. He, as a slave, he was not allowed to learn to read. But he used to sneak in as his slave mistress, the woman who owned him, would be teaching her son to read. And he would listen and he would try to pick up some of the words that she was teaching her son. And she saw him one day and said, "Frederick, you don't have to stand over there. Come on over and join us."
Jointly, my wife and I do the reenactments, and the reenactments have a number of purposes. One, to keep alive the legacy of my great-great-grandfather, but also to teach young people their heritage, and then we bring it current. I mean, we try and interpret what are the lessons, you know, from slavery. And the first and foremost lesson is that each and every one of us has within ourselves the infinite capacity to transform ourselves for better, because as we think my ancestors, your ancestors, or those of you whose ancestors came here as indentured servants, when they ended that period of servitude, they had nothing. And they were able to go forward, educate themselves, become the doctors and lawyers, so they transformed themselves. And we try and get young people to understand that they have an obligation to those who went before them and made so many sacrifices to become successful. And they have to have 100% participation in society, have to vote, have to study the documents, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and all the documents that govern our lives. We have to understand society, have to get an education, and have to work hard and pay back that obligation.
My name is Mary Myers. I am a coordinator for the Summer Youth Works program with the National Great Blacks in Wax Museum. Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was best known by the name of Moses. Moses, she was known as Moses of her people. Harriet Tubman was enslaved, escaped, and helped others gain their freedom as a conductor of the Underground Railroad. Well, as you know, many people think that it was actually a railroad. It was not a railroad. It was the path that Harriet Tubman took to get people to safety. Some of the path was not safe, very dangerous, but she knew the way. And that was what one of the things she was well known for. She was a civil rights activist. She also was a part of the women's suffrage movement to help African American women to gain the vote. So she was in that fight, and anything that would help women, that would help other people to gain their rights. Tubman also served as a scout, a spy, a guerrilla soldier, and a nurse for the Union Army during the Civil War. She was considered the first African American woman to serve in the military. Tubman's exact birth date is unknown, but estimates place it between 1820 and 1822 in Dorchester County, Maryland, right here in our homeland, our state. Born Alminta Ross, the daughter of Harriet Green and Benjamin Ross, Tubman had 8 siblings. By age 5, Tubman's owners rented her out to neighbors as a domestic servant. Early signs of her resistance to slavery and its abuses came at age 12 when she intervened to keep her master from beating an enslaved man who tried to escape. She was hit in the head with a 2-pound weight, leaving her with a lifetime of severe headaches and narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is a condition that causes someone to fall asleep without any control of themselves. Stay tuned. We'll be giving you more information about Harriet Tubman, best known as Moses.
Griot is an African storyteller, and in the African tradition, she keeps a lot of the Baltimore stories going.
Where you going? All right, now everybody get in order. Come on, form a line, 2 lines. That's it. Watch them cheering now. 2 lines. We're on our way to freedom. So come on, follow behind me. Sing the song. Come along, come along. What's the matter back there? She was known everywhere. She gave all that she had for freedom. Harriet Ross Tubman, and then the war came. Harriet joined the army. She was a soldier. She was a nurse. She was a spy. And when the war was over, the government promised her $20 a month, pension, severance pay. It took them 20 years to give her the first job. She was with friends' help, able to open up a home in Albany, New York. She opened it up to all indentured Negroes and old soldiers. Come along, join the freedom train. Come along, come along.
Hello, my name is Shanell Bryan. I am a docent at the Great Blacks and Wax Museum. A docent is a person who basically goes through the museum and tells you about who the figures are in the museum. Seeking no favors because of our color, nor patronage because of our needs, we knock at the bar of justice and ask for an equal chance. Mary Church Terrell. Although activist Mary Church Terrell was perhaps most known for her fight against racial segregation, she was also an outspoken advocate for women's suffrage. She was born in Memphis, Tennessee during the U.S. Civil War, 2 years before the Civil War was over, to well-to-do parents. Terrell became the first African-American woman to earn not only her bachelor's but her master's degree. As part of the black upper class, Terrell used her social position to champion racial and gender equality. Terrell moved to Washington, D.C. in 1887 to teach. And after 2 years touring Europe from 1888 to 1890, she returned to the nation's capital, where she lived until her death in 1954. Mary Church Terrell was forced to quit her job because of laws prohibiting married women to work. And in 1892, Terrell helped form the Colored Women's League in Washington, D.C. Women's clubs were an important way for African American women to improve the health, education, and welfare of their communities. In 1896, more than 100 black women joined the clubs together to form the National Association of Colored Women, referred to as NARC. This was before the NAACP, which is the National Association for Advancement of Colored People. Terrell was a founding member and served as its president from 1896 to 1901. And during her presidency is when she became involved in the women's suffrage movement. Terrell argued that the vote was even more important to African American women because they were disadvantaged by both their race and by their sex. And the vote would be key to achieving civil rights. Her idea, or Knox's idea, was lifting as we climb. The idea being, as we are lifted up, we will be bringing our sisters and brothers with us. As with American society as a whole, the women's suffrage movement was segregated, and black women were not allowed to be welcomed at white women's suffrage events. After befriending Susan B. Anthony, which was a white suffrage leader or pioneer, she spoke at the National American Women's Suffrage Association meetings, offering her perspective as a black woman. But she still was not allowed to march with the white women in their protests and their parades. During the lead up to the passage of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote, Terrell was part of perhaps the two most well-known events. The first one was in 1913 in a women's suffrage parade in Washington, D.C. She marched along with sisters of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority, which had just been founded at Howard University that same year. The second was in 1917, when on multiple occasions, Terrell and her daughter picketed in front of the White House with members of the National Women's Party. Terrell luckily was absent that day when the police were called to arrest the women for protesting. Even though the 19th Amendment was supposed to give all women the right to vote, many black women and men were still barred from voting by discriminatory state laws. Terrell spent the rest of her life advocating for both women's and African American rights and ending segregation in Washington, D.C. She died just months after the landmark decision in 1954, Supreme Court decision, Brown versus Board of Education, ending racial segregation in schools.